Here's your slice of pie.
Thanks.
Enjoy it. I'll be back in a second to check on you.
She's dead, wrapped in plastic.
She's been really years.
I have no idea where this will lead us, but I have a definite feeling it will be a place both wonderful and strange.
So DKL.
This is the strangest damn thing. Kale, it seems like you're really here. And Madgen
I'm really here.
and JW.
Right here, bud.
Madgen's full name is Machen Amik. But
Doesn't
I've
sound
been,
right.
it doesn't sound right to us. I started calling you Madgen, and I don't remember exactly why or when,
I think from the very beginning.
from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Now, Madgen,
Yeah.
you are staggeringly beautiful,
Thank you.
and you are a fantastic actress,
Thank you.
and you are a really great human being.
Thank you.
And you look as good or better than you did, back then, in the
I
double
was
R.
a baby back in the double R.
It's really good to see you,
Thank you.
Madgen. Really
It's
good to see you.
It's good to see you.
And Kale,
Kale.
your full name is Kyle MacLachlan, but I call you Kale. And I remember why I call you
story.
Kale. Dino De Laurentiis could never pronounce Kyle's name. He called him Kale.
Yep.
And so I started calling Kyle Kale, and that's the way it's been for years and years and years.
True. It's true.
And JW, or Johnny W., your full name is John Wentworth. And I got a letter from John before shooting Blue Velvet, and he was applying to be my assistant. And this letter was so formal and proper. And the name John Wentworth,
Yeah.
I pictured a very collegiate, super clean, bright as a shiny penny, good student.
And John is none of those things.
Showing up. And with a tie and a sharp jacket.
Yeah.
So I hired John unseen. And 3 days later, the door to the office opened up, and there was JW. And
Not in a
Not
tie.
quite what you expected.
not quite, but John was, a super cool guy.
He's a great guy.
He'd been in the family for years and years. You asked me what I remembered. I had an agent. I still have an agent.
Right.
Good.
The same agent.
Same agent.
But there was a guy, Tony Krantz, down the hall in TV.
Sure.
And Tony went to Rick Nacita and said, I would like to talk to David about doing something in TV.
Which you'd never done.
Never done
before.
And so I didn't want to do that. And then I had been working with Mark Frost.
Mm-hmm.
And I met Mark because of this book called The Goddess about Marilyn Monroe. And we were going to write this screenplay. And but that project didn't go. But one day I was talking to Mark and I said, do you like comedy? And he said, yeah. I said, do you think you would like to write a comedy? And he said, yeah. And so Mark and I worked on this thing called One Saliva Bubble for,
I remember
and
One
we
Saliva Bubble.
laughed like crazy.
That was a very funny script.
Yeah, it was very fun for us.
Yeah.
And that almost went. But then we'd become friends, and so when Tony came along and said this thing, something kind of, it was like it wanted to be. but we didn't really know that.
Right.
And so we got together in Dupar's on Ventura Boulevard.
Sure. Classic.
And we talked and just kind of like rolled things around. And a thing started, and we were going to call it Northwest Passage.
Yes.
And it was going to be set in North Dakota.
Was it in North Dakota?
Yeah,
really?
it was in North
Okay,
Dakota.
Okay.
And that kind of rolled around. And then we decided, well, we were going to write, and I was spending a lot of time in New York then. And so we started out writing over the telephone. And Mark was completely computer savvy. So we tried to write over the telephone, and it kind of got a little bit of a start.
Right.
And then back I went to LA, and we began writing more in earnest. And ideas started coming. And we would write at Mark's house. And he had a chair that reminded me of a kind of a chair the psychiatrist would put a patient in. A kind of a chaise lounge.
Right.
Black leather. And it was a little slippery. And that's where I would lay down in there. And
Stare at the ceiling and come up with ideas.
and then we were writing, and we wrote like that. And he drank soy milk. And I think he got me whole milk for coffees.
Right.
And that was really nice.
Whole milk is sort of key.
Yeah.
If you're
And
gonna have coffee.
but he had
No,
a lot
soy
of.
is better.
You like soy? Well,
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
we can differ
that's
on
what
that.
makes the world go round.
exactly.
Matchkin likes soy milk.
Yes.
So if she visited Mark, there
I would be
pl-
set.
You'd be set, yeah. Me, I like whole milk, and when I visited Mark, I was fresh out of luck. So,
Bring your own.
yeah, we worked, and this one night at about 9:45, maybe 10 o'clock, we finished the script for the pilot. And Mark printed out 2 copies. And when I got home, I thought, oh, I will read this script now. And I sat down and I read it. And I got on the phone right away to Mark. And I said, Mark, this is pretty good. And he said, I know, I just finished reading it myself. He said, it's pretty good. And we were sort of surprised. I heard a surprise in his voice.
Right.
He heard a surprise in my voice.
Right.
And that's what, started everything. Now, Cale, how do you remember you getting involved as Special Agent Dale Cooper?
I remember that you were saying that I should be Dale Cooper, but that you were also wanting Mark to have a say in who should be this character. And I remember that I met with Mark. We sat down and just got hello and got to know each other a little bit. And after that meeting with Mark, he said, okay, I'm good with Kyle doing the role. And I remember thinking, I thought, I seem a little young for the character, I thought. But then I thought, well, that doesn't really matter, really. He can be any age, But in my head, I sort of was thinking, oh, maybe he should be older.
No, but Cooper has such high intelligence and intuition.
Right.
It doesn't matter how old you are.
Right.
It doesn't matter one little bit.
Right. It took me
You're the guy.
It took me a long time to figure that out. But then we got to talking, and TV was also sort of new for me, because I hadn't done much. And so, when you go into TV, you sign a 5-year contract or 5.5-year contract. And I remember thinking, the original idea was for what they call back-end pilot, right? So we made a movie of the week.
No, we had to do a European ending. That's all, what I remember. They
maybe
came
that's
and
what it
told
was.
me.
Because I saw that when I was in Paris. I saw the video of Twin Peaks with the ending,
Yeah.
which is from episode 2. But I remember thinking, nobody in their right mind is going to buy this, and make it into a series. It's just too out there. I said, no one is going to understand it. No one's going to appreciate it. So when ABC and Bob Iger said, "Oh, we're going to buy, those first 6 or 7 episodes," everybody was like, "Oh my God, this is fantastic." We were taking over somehow. Basically the asylum. The inmates were taking over the asylum. That's what it felt like. And we felt like we could really create something that was just mad,
Yeah.
I remember thinking that. That was cool.
Very cool. And Kales, you did such a stellar job.
Oh, thank you.
And Special Agent Cooper, so fantastic you were.
It's the best introduction I think I've ever had into anything, a movie or TV, driving up the hill. I remember sitting in that car, having learned a couple pages or whatever it was, and being towed up the hill. We only had a certain amount of distance. We had to get it done by, there was a point we had to turn around. And, just doing all this stuff, and everything just sort of fell into place. It was weird. We did like a couple takes is all. I remember it wasn't that big of a deal, and suddenly it was like just pulling out pieces of paper and getting the right thing and talking to Diane and driving. I mean, it was all this stuff, and I was like, wow. All the stuff you created, it was just perfect.
Perfect.
That entire character exists in that, couple-minute piece.
Yeah.
Dale Cooper's right there. You meet him, the best introduction I've ever had. So that was cool.
Well, now let's let Matchkin go down memory lane.
Yeah.
How did it happen, Matchkin, that you got this role of Shelley?
I don't. I remember specifically being in a hotel room reading the script, but I cannot figure out why I was in a hotel room and why I was reading the
Matchkin,
script.
it's a good thing you don't remember.
But
Those pills worked.
It really worked. I was so brand new, fresh out of Reno, Nevada, with these big
Did you
dreams
come up from
and ideas.
Reno? Did you come up from Reno?
No,
or
I was
down?
here, but I was only in Los Angeles for only probably about a year.
Before that?
Before
Okay, now
coming in for the show.
Now what were you doing during that year, and how did this thing come about that you got the script? What happened?
Well, at 14 years old, I decided that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a big movie actress.
And you sure
So
did.
within those 2 years, I made my plan of how I was going to get to Los Angeles and how
Now,
I
what
was going to
sign
get
of the
agents.
zodiac are you? Matt?
Sagittarius.
You're Sagittarius.
Oh yeah, we
huh?
can do anything.
Yeah. Okay. So
We can
you are
conquer
so
anything.
organized and willful. This is very good. Now, so you
Yeah.
at 14. You decided to do this.
Yes, through different, meeting different people and finding my way, I went and sort of knocked on the door of a modeling agency and a commercial agency and a theatrical agency, and I ended up pinning them down saying, would you represent me? And they said, well, if you come back and you're emancipated, yes. I said, okay, I'll be back.
Explain emancipated.
Okay, so, well, emancipated is you go to the courts and your parents sign away their guardianship over you so that you can work as an adult.
Wow. And how old were you when you were emancipated?
16.
16.
Yeah. So I moved away from home at 16, was emancipated with my parents' blessing, but I moved away from home. And so within that year, I just worked my butt off. I just went to every video audition, commercial, modeling, anything I could possibly do. And sort of towards the end of the year, I had a few good acting jobs that seemed to be coming into place. And one of them was the Baywatch pilot, which I was actually filming when I met you. But so during that process of that
Now,
year...
tell us about Baywatch. What is that?
Baywatch was a
exercise
delightful
video.
show for many years that featured a lot of people with beautiful bodies in bathing suits and lifeguards saving people
I
at the
gotcha.
beach and,
There's a beach show.
It's a beach show.
Uh-huh.
But really, I was the only one that actually wasn't in a bathing suit. I was the psychotic teenager that tried to kill herself at the pier, which then in turn wanted to kill the lifeguard who saves me wife so I could take her place.
Wow.
So it was
A
a
whole
good
scenario.
acting.
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
really
yeah.
good. So it was challenging. And that was before it sort of became what it became. But in the process of that year and proving yourself as a young actress that hadn't done anything, you go through these stages of going in front of casting directors so that the agents can feel like you're good enough for them to send you out on real jobs.
Right.
So I had gone in for Joanna Ray.
Isn't Joanna great? And she
love
loves
Joanna.
actors,
She
and
loves-
so many actors have been helped by Joanna. So many. And she gets behind somebody, she just is like really, really great.
Yeah. She's been
Because
really...
I didn't want you, Madgen, and she pushed and pushed and pushed.
Well, she's been instrumental in actually many important things in my career. It was...
Well, tell us about Joanna then a little bit.
Okay, so before you actually go in and audition for a real job, you need to prepare a scene and come in and perform it in front of casting directors, and then they give their opinions to your agents whether you're good or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember, I think I prepared actually a scene from Body Heat. And so I did it for Joanna, and she just was wonderful and supportive, and sort of from that moment on was always brought me in for things that she thought I was right for, and just was always putting me in front of people, and so that's how I ended up coming in for you. But I remember reading this script, and it just felt so much like home, coming from the Northwest myself, and I just related to it. And I remember coming in after filming a long day on Baywatch, and coming in and meeting with you, and I think I had prepared Lara Flynn Boyle's part originally. And I remember Eric being there, Joanna's son, reading for Leo. And it just, I guess it ended up, you talked to me about that you thought I would be right for probably Shelley, you know. But that's my memory of the beginning of Shelley Johnson for me.
Wow, cool, Madgen.
Yeah.
I have a favorite. There's a line that she does in the pilot that is so amazing.
Which one is that?
It's the one I always remember. It's like when they're in there's happy hour in France, right? And they're driving up to the house, and you see the truck. His truck is there, and you, with Dana Ashbrook, and
Yeah.
you say, "Back up" or something like that. There's some way you say it that's like real terror, and what it did, it made Eric's character that much more frightening because your reaction was so palpable. And I said, God, it's just a beautiful moment. I just said, I always remember that.
And you know, when you were talking about how you say my name, for the longest time you were saying it Madgen, and I thought, I don't know, maybe at some point I should tell him how to really pronounce my name. And so I eventually I got up the guts to come up and just go, David, actually you pronounce my name Machen. He said, I know, Madgen. I want to call you Madgen. Oh, okay.
So, JW,
Yes.
how is it that you became involved with Twin Peaks?
Well, I had a prior association with some of the principal people involved with the project. I worked on a motion picture called Blue Velvet. There was a little break between the end of that really wonderful experience, and I was hustling around working on commercials and doing things like that. And I remember kind of out of the blue getting a call, I think from you, saying, John, I'm doing this project up north, and would you like to go record sound effects on this pilot? And I thought, well, that's a great idea. I've never recorded sound effects in my life. I have no idea how to do something like that. Of course, I didn't say anything to you about that. And I remember getting the script and reading it and thought it was just a beautiful, really wonderful piece of work. And I packed myself up in my Oldsmobile station wagon and drove to the Northwest.
Now, can I tell that one story about you saving the sawmill?
If the world is ready, I think.
I think it is. I've told this story.
I don't know the story.
Okay, so
Okay.
JW went up there to record sound effects, and I knew full well that he had never recorded sound effects.
Right.
But JW is a very smart guy
Right.
and savvy.
Yeah.
And I saw him a few times, but it's very hard to recognize him because he was bundled like a bear. Fur all around his
remember the
head
fur hat.
and a giant, paddings.
It was cold.
It was cold.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very cold when we shot that pilot. Now, this was the beautiful sawmill, which was destined to be closed, and we had the opportunity to film in there. JW was recording sound effects, and off on his, just alone, in the backwoods there. Meanwhile, the sawmill guys had a huge problem. And on one day, they ran across JW, and they might have thought he was what is the
Sasquatch?
Sasquatch. At first. But then as he got closer, they realized it was a human being. And they started talking, and they mentioned that there was a big problem with the mill, huge losses of power. John sort of frowned and said, I know what you're talking about because I recorded that sound. And he led them to these massive broken pipes and saved, who knows how many days, of looking. So he saved,
saved the mill.
Saved the mill.
I saved the mill. Yeah.
Yay,
Thank you.
JW. Very
Thank
good.
you,
Very
yeah.
good. And there's a plaque.
There's a plaque.
Yeah,
for
I got
JW.
Back with
You
the
saved the
broken
mill
pipes.
plaque.
Yeah,
I have that.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, how did it get from North Dakota
That's
to
a
what
good-
ended up being Snow Point?
And how did it get from Northwest
Passage,
Passage
yeah,
to
to
Twin Peaks?
Well, Northwest Passage, I think, is the title already used,
Yeah.
and so that meant, we sort of used it just as a working title, knowing it was not going to probably be that. But where Twin Peaks, I think that must have been Mark, and then the Northwest. I don't know quite how it got up there, but I grew up in the Northwest, and the woods played such a big role as it does up there, and the mystery in the woods. Anyway, it went there. Now, Cale, you're from
I'm from
the state
Yakima.
of, yeah, there you go.
From the state of Yakima. And I went to school in Seattle and would drive that road,
Yeah.
back and forth home to Seattle, and would go right by North Bend where the Double R was.
And JW was so influenced by Twin Peaks that he now is a mountain man.
Yes.
He's a mountain trooper.
I was born in Medford, Oregon, too.
Oh,
See,
wow.
there you-
See, that's
It's
We're
that's
all
good.
Yeah.
Northwesters.
And I worked in
Yeah.
Ashland. I know Medford.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked in Ashland for a
And if
season.
Catherine
River.
Colson was here, the log lady, she lives in Ashland and is part of the
does?
Shakespearean
Really?
company.
I
And
didn't know
she's the
that.
actress, I think I just heard, the longest running actress
In
in
Ashland.
that troupe.
Wow. Was Boise? You were born in Boise or was
No, I was
Missoula.
born in Missoula,
Missoula,
Montana.
Missoula. I get that.
I lived in Boise,
That's
and
right.
I love Boise, Idaho.
Yeah.
I lived in Spokane,
Spokane.
and I lived in Sandpoint, Idaho,
Yep.
and I was born in Missoula.
Yeah, that's right. Montana.
My dad
Montana.
died in Missoula.
Your dad died in Missoula.
He lived in Missoula and died there.
Wow.
This is crazy.
Incredible, Madkin.
Yeah.
Wow. What did your dad do?
He was a musician,
Yeah, I think you told
traveling
me this.
musician. And you met him at the Red Lion. He came up and we
Wow.
met. Yeah, I introduced you to him in the
Man.
hotel room. Yeah. And he passed
How
away
did he
right
die?
after. Massive heart attack after his 50th birthday. Just out of the blue. Did that just scare everybody
Oh,
at the table?
48 a couple days ago.
Well, happy birthday, JW.
Oh, thank you.
What
Thank you
sign
very
of the
much.
zodiac are you?
Aries.
You're in Aries.
I have the same birthday as your daughter, Jennifer. We were born on the same day.
and Francis Ford Coppola.
And Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, so happy birthday to you all.
Yeah, thank you.
That's so good.
Yeah, Aries is a very good sign.
Very good. April 7th.
What's your sign?
Kind of myopic, but
Kale.
Me? Oh, Pisces.
Pisces.
Yeah.
Kale's a drinker and a dreamer.
You got that right. You got that right.
And what are you?
I'm a Capricornus. I'm on the border.
On the border. Nice. Nice.
Okay, you guys.
All right.
This is during the pilot, and that's why I sort of wish, you know, Ron Garcia was here.
Oh, Ron,
because
sure.
he was up there. We were shooting the scene where James Hurley drives out and meets with Donna, and they have this talk in the woods. Donna and James. And so we were on a back road way back in the mountains and found this place where there's this little trail, perfect setting, but it was freezing cold. And it's like there are places that had a temperature colder than that, but this cold was, it would seep into your bones. And I was freezing up there, and the crew was freezing. And Donna's nose would look like Rudolph, you know, and James was suffering.
I remember that scene. They looked both like they were.
Yeah, and so James rides in with the big Harley, right? And then they get off and they start, you know, talking. Down below, Debbie Trutnick, sensing the suffering. The suffering was traveling through the air, and she was picking up on it.
Okay, good. As when Debbie could. Yeah.
And so she went to the producer and said, "Don't you think it would be a good idea to send some hot food up to them up on the mountain?"
Right.
And so they organized a meal to go up the mountain to us. And when it arrived, the crew was pretty happy.
Yeah.
And so we broke for these hamburgers. And no sooner did they bite into them, they discovered the center of those burgers were ice. They were ice.
Meaning they weren't cooked
They
hot
were not
enough?
cooked.
So it's not like they got
They weren't
cooled
even,
down.
they were like seared for a millisecond. And the center was ice. And then it became, you know, somewhat humorous to us.
For me, I went, you know, again, being so brand new and having that be my introduction to television and being an actress in Hollywood. And I went out of that experience. I was so saturated by it, and it was such a positive experience and a creative experience. And then I went out and had to find myself in the real Hollywood and the
That was the real
Normal.
Hollywood, baby.
Okay.
And
Everybody else is just pretending. But you know, all the different rules that they go by, and it took me a long time to figure out that it was really different than what we did, you know, that it isn't always such an open, creative, positive environment. That there's all these other rules I wasn't ready for. So I
that's
sort of went
just
out to
what
it.
it's like, if I may, of working with David. I think that's
Yeah.
what you mean. It's like that experience is rare. And
Yeah.
that's why everyone wants to work with you,
Oh,
because
bless you,
of
Kale.
what you, the energy and the atmosphere that
Yeah.
exists
Well,
in the set, you know.
beautiful.
I loved working with you, but
Oh, thanks, man.
and Matchkin and JW for sure, and all the bunch. It was really, really great.
I remember that there was a moment during the series that you, and I don't remember what episode it was, but it was an episode where Shelley had to break down in the diner because of stuff that was going on with Leo, and there was, you know, it really needed to be a devastating scene, and you know, I'm just trying to find my way, and you came up to me and you just put your hand on my arm and you said, you know. And I just felt this overwhelming that I was ready and that you needed to go, and that whatever you sent to me, I was ready. And so you just walked away and you filmed, and I got whatever it was that you were trying to tell
No,
me.
you got it
I
inside
took
you,
it.
Matchkin. Matchkin, you know, you just got, you know, solid gold. And I got to kiss you, Matchkin.
I know. I feel honored.
Well, I feel, are you kidding me? One of the highlights of, you know, of my life. And I remember thinking, how sick is this? Writing that into it so I could kiss Matchkin.
But still, the pen kept.
Yeah, it was automatic writing.
Automatic
I mean, it was
writing.
coming.
For me, it was, you know,
How many takes did we have to do of that?
A lot.
So-
We had to do a lot. We had to get it just right. There was focus problems.
Yeah, I
there was
know.
battery problems. There was always something going on.
That's funny.
No, I felt honored that Agent Cole could only hear one person on this earth, and it was Shelley Johnson. That just was my favorite moment of all during the whole
Right,
series.
right.
That was fun when you came on and we did that stuff together. That was great.
Yeah.
Cooper and Cole.
Gordon Cole is a character in Sunset Boulevard,
Ah, okay.
and Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard. And Gordon Cole was looking to rent Norma Desmond's car. And so the man who played Gordon Cole is on the screen, you
Right.
know, in the film. And then if you drive to Paramount, from the east to Paramount, you'll pass Gordon and Cole.
That's right.
And so I figure, oh my God, that's where that name came
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
And then Gordon Cole worked his way into Twin Peaks, because there's a scene early on where you're talking to your supervisor, Gordon
Yeah,
Cole,
Gordon Cole, yeah.
from the Truman's. It's like, I think it's in the conference room. I can't remember exactly. And I think I just did the voice, you know, to be on the other side of it.
Right.
And I found myself talking, you know, loud through there for some reason.
Right.
And so the thing got born.
That's funny. Well, I remember you would, this was either before monitors or you just never used it. You were always right next to the camera or right below the camera watching the scene so that you were as close as you could be to
Right.
getting what the
That's
camera
where I
was.
figured you're supposed to be, you know what I mean? To see the scene.
You see, it's not so common.
You know
anymore.
that
People
scene you
don't
were
do
talking
that.
about in the pilot where Shelley and Bobby are driving up to the house.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're drinking out of the flask
Yeah,
and all
it's
that.
Happy Hour in France, yeah.
David was at our feet in the car.
Were you really right down in front? Oh
What a
my
beautiful
God.
place to be.
Yeah.
The feet of Munchkin.
Yeah.
Heat of mention. We used to do scenes, and you used to sort of talk, and we would basically try to crack each other up. And I remember you were trying to always make me laugh. Or there's a couple of times that we got into trouble. So it was a lot of fun.
So much fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Now it was a surprise to everyone that it took off as
Successful, yeah. That first
Crazily
season.
as
That
It was
did.
an
I think-
amazing thing.
Was it not a surprise to the network as well? They
Yes, it was a huge
certainly did
surprise.
not expect it.
The thing was done, and the night was planned, and it was maybe advertised like a normal thing.
And they
They
put
had-
us opposite Cheers, which was very, very,
Very popular.
popular at the time.
Yeah.
And there were tests done.
Right.
And it didn't do as bad as they thought, but it didn't do great. But I think they were even a little bit surprised that it went sort of in the middle.
Right,
Right.
right. They were expecting it to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was where it was sort of hovering in the middle. And it came on one night, the pilot. And it got a huge share,
Really.
like huge. And I was in New York, and the next day I flew back, and the wife of the runner of an opposing network came to me and said, I love, your show. I love your show. I had to sneak in the other room because my husband wouldn't watch it. And I snuck in there and I saw it. I just love it. He's dying. He's dying. You got such a great share. Congratulations.
Right.
And so it went really good for some reason.
Yeah.
And those woods and the characters and something traveled that way around the world.
Yeah. Quickly.
It was really, really something.
How did it go? Because they had the pilot on, and then how shortly?
I don't
The
remember.
next week, did they put
We
the
were
first?
a mid-season replacement, if I remember
Yeah, we
Yes,
only
we
had-
were.
correctly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we were.
were.
Yeah.
The pilot was on in the spring.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the numbers, if maybe you could graphically represent over the 2-hour course of the show, it kind of started like this, and then kind of started doing
Oh,
like
it went
that.
like that, yeah.
And like the last half hour just went, whoop.
Yeah.
Everybody was calling
People
and
started
saying,
calling
watch
everything.
this
What the hell?
or finding it.
Yeah.
Something crazy on the other
Yeah.
channel. We gotta tune in
yeah,
and
yeah.
look at it.
Yeah, check it out.
So
Well,
it's a good-
David, it's not just because it was the woods and it was interesting. It was because you make beautiful, beautiful work.
Yeah, well, let's
And you
just
tell
stop.
great stories.
Stop 1 second. Mark Frost and I, did that. And Mark Frost is at least 50% of it. And I loved working with Mark. And we had a thing going, complimenting one another, and the thing would flow. And so it was a very special experience. And like I say, it wanted to be. It had its thing, it lived, and we went, but now it did a lot of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
did a lot of things.
Did a
We
lot of
made a world.
Influenced. The influence is still being felt from conversations I have.
So it's a great thing to have the pilot and the first season and the second season all together, the whole story,
Yeah.
and it's very, very good. The thing that kills me is that the murder of Laura Palmer was never supposed to be solved.
Really.
And the reason is that is this beautiful little goose. And the little goose is laying golden eggs. And why would you kill this little goose? It's unreal.
Yeah.
It's a huge sadness. A huge sadness and an absurdity that ever happened.
Was that just pressure?
Pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the pressure really, if you translate that pressure, is that a need to know, and that need to know is what draws you in.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what happened.
How do you really feel about it?
So anyway, it's
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
there was room for so many other mysteries, but that mystery was sacred. And it held the other ones. It was the tree, and the other ones were the branches.
Yeah.
And it's just like I said, a sadness.
Yeah. Yeah, those core mysteries, you can't mess with them.
No. Now JW, in television there's post-production. And so JW just didn't, hike in the backwoods recording sound effects. He was living only at night in the lab, hour upon hour of finessing, the final stages of every show. And you might tell some of what goes on, when a show is finished editing and it hit you. What did you do, JW?
Well, it was, I think like everything associated with the show, it was an excellent team effort. And we had Phil Neal, myself, Liz Corbett, many others, a crack team of some of the best editors working in the business, assistants. The show attracted some of the best directors working in show business. So it was the best talent that the business has to offer was involved in doing the show. And we worked hard, and we loved every second of it.
What did you do?
Worked really hard.
Do you remember, those late nights?
Yes, I remember our schedule typically was that each episode had a different director. There's a very specific schedule for maybe I think 4 or 5 days on the set. They'd have about probably a month for editing, and then there'd be sound mixing and color correction and visual effects and things like that. And so the shows would just come through, and 1 week after the next was one different set, one right after the other. Typically, Monday morning would come, and we would report to work at 9, and then we'd work 8 hours. Then the color correction would start at 6 o'clock in the evening and go from 6 o'clock in the evening until 2 o'clock in the morning. And then we'd get back to work at 9 o'clock Tuesday morning and work the entire day, and then do color correction from 6 o'clock Tuesday until 2 o'clock Wednesday morning. That would be right, and then Phil Neal would be doing with the sound mixing, supervising the sound mixing on Wednesday at a stage at the famous Taddeo Glen Studios, and then we'd come back and do the onlines full days Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and everybody would just collapse and be in piles by Friday evening, Saturday morning, and then we'd somehow pull this all back together and go back and do it again. And this went on for certainly for the first season, the second season, for weeks and weeks and months, and we were lost in a.
So there was basically no sleeping whatsoever.
There was no sleeping, but we didn't need it because this world was just a joy to be in. And I mean, just imagine nothing else, the music, the quality of the music that we would just listen to.
The great Angelo Badalamenti.
The great Angelo Badalamenti. And the highlight of my job, there were many highlights, but one that really stands out was delivering. I was tasked with taking the tapes and carrying them to the network headquarters and watch them take the tapes out of the boxes, mount them upon the vintage creaking 1-inch video machines, spooling the tapes up and running it to check for technical stuff, and then watch their faces as certain scenes from Twin Peaks would unspool on their monitors. That was a really specifically nice and beautiful experience.
Very good, JW.
Do you have favorite episodes or favorite moments, or just?
Well, I like all the.
Gordon Cole, of course.
Yeah. And
Never seen him in a diner.
and I like Shelley.
Yeah.
I like all of it, but I loved because of the European ending needed to be done.
Yeah.
I didn't have any ideas, and I wasn't really focused on that. It's just finishing the pilot.
Right.
But then this pressure came, someone said, you've got to fulfill this obligation.
Yeah.
It's part of this contract.
Yeah.
And we were editing, and it was about 6 o'clock on a very beautiful, warm evening.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out to the parking lot, and we were at CFI Lab, and we had editing rooms there. And in the parking lot, there was a car there, and I was leaning against the car roof, and I was feeling how nice and warm it was. It was so toasty, and I was digging this warmth, and in comes the red room. And I went like this, and I told Dwayne, I said, Dwayne, don't let me forget this, or something like this.
Right.
And I went and wrote it, and then I wrote it again with Mark, because Mark is, my, partner on this, and we shot that red room. And it was really a good experience. It was so much fun.
People say when they see that, because you're watching a show that's already unusual, and suddenly you're in the red room, and suddenly, wham, you're like in another dimension. It just takes you right away.
So that was a thrilling thing. How Frank, Bob became born out of it. These things weren't there, but they came out. And that's a beautiful thing of how one thing leads to another. And you just have to pay attention. Things start, coming out. That's the beautiful thing about a continuing story.
Right.
We don't know where it's going to go, but you'll be going along, and we'll be in a scene, and Shelley will say something just a certain way. A whole nother world opens up, just like in a second. Ideas flowing.
Yeah.
Who are the Europeans, and why did they get a special ending?
Johnny, there's certain things that we don't want to talk about. The Europeans we love, and but the whole thing of why this was necessary opens a door that is, not worth talking about unless we had a box of Kleenex.
I don't think I ever saw it. There was a different ending.
Yes, there's a different ending.
Yeah, I don't think
And
I ever saw
but that need for the different ending gave birth to the Red Room. So you see what I mean? That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, exactly right.
And Bob being
Bob, that
Being the
wasn't born
killer.
out of the need for that.
That was a mistake that turned into a
No, it
beautiful
wasn't a
gem.
mistake. No.
Well, did
no,
you capture him?
not. That wasn't the first thing.
Oh.
I was up in Laura Palmer's house on the second floor, under the fan. And I was on my hands and knees for some reason, cleaning some little part of the rug. And I was facing away from the door of the Laura Palmer's bedroom. And I heard a girl's voice, a woman's voice, speak to Frank Silva, who was the set dresser. And Frank was in Laura Palmer's room prepping it for shooting. And he was moving a dresser, and he had moved it near the front of near the door. And the woman said, I'm hearing it, like back there, Frank, don't lock yourself in that room. Ha ha, you know? And I suddenly pictured Frank in that room, for like the word locked, and like something like this. And I went running into Frank. I said, Frank, are you an actor? And like everybody in Hollywood, he said, why, yes, David, I am. And so I said, you're going to be in this scene. And he says, what am I going to do? And I said, I don't know. And then we shot these just a drifting across the bed, just to drift across the room. Nobody was in it. And then I said, Frank, now you get down and hold the end of the bed like this and freeze. And we did one shot with him there. And then we went downstairs and we got geared up to shoot night scene when Laura Palmer's mother, the great Grace Zabriskie, is laying down and she's distraught. We had an operator named Sean, and Sean is on the wheels. And what Grace has to do is she's thinking and she's picturing things in her mind's eye, and she sees something about the woods and the finding of that thing. And so she bolts upright, screaming. And Sean has to get her like this. And it was perfect, the first one. And I said, great, cut it, you know. And Sean said, no. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, there was someone reflected in the mirror. And I said, who was reflected in the mirror? And he said, Frank was reflected in the mirror. And there he is.
Yeah.
Right at the bottom of an oval mirror.
Wow.
Wow. I just got goosebumps.
How great is that?
Great.
That's great.
Madgen, what, as you look back, the whole thing, what stands out as your kind of favorite memory?
I was sitting in a booth in the Double R Diner, and I felt very soft lips kiss me.
That's so beautiful, Meg.
I opened my eyes, and there's David Lynch.
That's great. There are so many moments that I can think of that were just so unusual. I think more than anything, it was, for me, I think the first time, because I hadn't done that many things to that point, but it was the first time that I felt a real kinship with a character. As much as I enjoyed working together, Dune and Blue Velvet and that, for some reason, Dale Cooper felt like I was home in a weird way. I don't know why. So I think more than any specific moment, it was overall a feeling of immense creativity, and that whatever I was doing wasn't right, wasn't wrong, just was, and was therefore, you know, a-okay. And I think so much of that had to do with us working together. By then it was number 3, so we had a shorthand that was a shorthand of a shorthand. And I remember all I really needed was your thumbs up, you know, and then I could really relax and just, you know, channel old Dale. So.
Can you talk a little bit about Michael Onkeen, Sheriff Truman, and your relationship? Because that's another dynamic duo that was people, I think, just loved that that you guys got along, and a lot of things was so fantastic.
His energy was about the most laid back of anybody I've ever met.
Very kind.
And he was exactly generous and kind and so happy to be in the world of Twin Peaks. I remember him just feeling like he had found his dimension somehow. And the two of us together, just visually, energetically, was so unusual. And yet there was a great affection that we each held for each other, and kind of a wonderful pleasure that we took in each other's company that sometimes happens with people that are different.
Yeah.
And that you could completely understand and appreciate the friendship of these two men.
Yeah.
And him finding humor in strange places, you know. He's a great guy. That was a great relationship.
JW, what is your favorite memory?
My favorite memory is, it goes right to the heart of this process. 2:47 a.m. Up on a hill in a deep, dark wood, wrapped in my protective outerwear, headphones on my head, stereo microphone at the end of a pole, recording a just ferocious gale in the branches, and just rolling that tape. And then, several months later, being in the Fantasy mixing facility in Berkeley, California, on Saturday morning at about 3, probably the same time, 2:47 in the morning, sitting in the theater of the mixing plays and watching the playback of this pilot. And having been through a week of watching the best technicians at, superbly directed, create something that really affirmed everything you could ever want to know about what filmmaking can really be and how good it can really be. And to watch a process that was pushed really, really hard, and people, flipping out, and problems and things not working and nothing making any sense, but then sitting back and watching this thing and hearing that wind come back and hear it in that deeply embedded off someplace in the soundtrack, but hearing that thing come back, it was an extremely affirming and excellent experience.
Beautiful. They asked if I sum up in 7 words, because 7 is my favorite number.
I love 7 too.
You do,
7
Matt?
and 17.
Huh?
17 has always been my favorite.
17 is an 8, but that's a nice number too. A great number. But 7, so to sum up in 7 words, I love Twin Peaks and its world.
Perfect.
Another cup of Joe?
Do birds fly?
They sure do.
Sounds good.
I'll be right back.
Okay.